Hello everyone and welcome to another podcast episode. Now before we get into this, let's just talk about the buzz that's going around on my social media at the moment with these visits that I'm getting into schools, and they're becoming more and more frequent. I spoke last month to 1,250 students at an all-boys school in South London, and last week I spoke to another 400 students in a school in Kent. This is going really well, and honestly, just the way this presentation is evolving, I'm really getting these students engaged, and they're all coming up to me afterwards or writing to me saying how great they thought it was. So that's job done. But of course on my social media, as you know, I'm not just only speaking in schools. I'm trying to hit this subject from all angles, and this podcast is about a post that I released last week that just started going crazy, and I wanted to spend some time talking about it. So as always, the websites are jeremyindica.com, somethingtosayofficial.com. You can support all of that work financially through the clothing, through the Patreon service there if you wish to do so. We are a team, we are a community, and we are so strong and we want change. Thank you so much. Okay, so I don't know whether you've been on my social media last week at all, but something pretty bad happened last week. I feel pretty sad about it. I wasn't expecting it, but now looking back at it, I'm thinking to myself, of course, something like this was going to happen. So I put out a post with some of my thoughts as I continue to try to brainstorm the prevention of the crime against children, this sexual crime that is happening so frequently we can't even believe it. And I wrote a post thinking about professional work in regards to offenders. Now, I was very careful not to say professional help with regards to offenders because I know the language is very important here. We don't want to make this more emotive than it needs to be. So I wrote a post, I put it together, and the title of it was, and let me just pull that up on Instagram for a moment. So the title of it was, Should a Therapist Speak to Paedophiles? And you're going to see on the screen here, if you're watching along on YouTube, it was in big, bold letters, white and black background. And I knew, well, I have to try my hardest to try to catch your attention as you're scrolling rapidly through your social media. And I kind of knew that this would do that. I thought it was a good design and I thought it was a catchy headline, but a headline with purpose, because I want to open up this discussion. Now, I posted it on all my social media platforms. I posted it on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, and YouTube. And the comments in general were not that many. Facebook had 6 or 7 comments, for example. LinkedIn had 6 or 7 comments, for example. But what was very interesting is 2 or 3 people wrote in the comments section saying, wow, you don't mind, what was the phrase that they used? Putting your head out the poor pit? I can't remember exactly. I may have that phrase completely wrong. But, you know, they were suggesting, wow, this is a bit out there, Jeremy. You're putting yourself in the firing line. And it's almost a shame that I have to, or that I am putting myself in the firing line by just trying to open up these conversations, these discussions between us all. Because we all have the same goal of maximising the chances that this doesn't happen to so many children. So I read those comments. Yep, okay, that's fine. And then I checked out my Instagram, and my Instagram started going crazy. People were commenting left, right and centre. Now, the initial comments were very supportive that I was brave enough, in inverted commas. I don't see why that word needs to be used for just trying to initiate a conversation. But okay, that's great. Thank you for the compliment. And people were supporting the conversation. In fact, a lot of people were agreeing with the title of Should a Therapist Speak to Paedophiles? We're going to get into a bit more on what angles those people that were supporting this title were saying. So I saw that it went off, and I checked about an hour and a half later. I was working that night because I was staying away doing a speaking event. So I just generally work until I go to bed. And I saw that there started becoming a bit of an argument. And it started getting really heated in the comment section between people just going at each other. And I immediately felt sad. I really did. Because we're all on the same team and we all want the same thing. Like we're all standing on the same side here. And just to see people really getting very emotive, and that's fine, that's necessary. We need to get emotional and passionate about this, but to see people expressing their anger towards each other was really sad for me to see. So I kind of kept up with that feed throughout the night, and it just continued to grow. Now, what I felt was a shame from the start, from the off, was I tried my best to write the caption to this post in a way that would stop the arguments that were going on, because it started to seem like the post had split the audience that were interacting with it in two. It was like side A and side B. And I tried to write the caption in a way that was going to answer people's immediate thoughts off the back of the title, Should a Therapist Speak to Paedophiles? Because I now have been doing work for this work for some time now, and I know the general knee-jerk reaction to a title like that, because I've tried posting these subject areas, or these areas of the subject that we generally talk about here, a number of times. So I try to write the caption in a way that would answer those emotive immediate reactions straight away, so that we could actually think about this logically. Now, let me read out the caption for you. And I spent a lot of time writing this. And just to let you know, when you read my posts, very few of them have been written that day. Many of them I write over 2 or 3 days and continually revisit them, because I'm trying to write them in the clearest and concise way that I possibly can, the clearest way, and a way that is easily read, relatable, and kind of communicates my point in the best way that my brain can communicate it. And this was one of those posts that I wrote over 2 or 3 days. And I wrote the caption like this: Before anyone shouts, there's no cure. I didn't say anything about a cure. I'm talking about our current methods not working, where we just call them evil and think that that's solving anything. And yes, I know there are many offenders out there that just don't give a damn. And even if we lock them up on release, they'd come out and do the same thing again. But what about the ones that would engage with professionals? Ones that we could persuade to never offend again? And imagine if we were successful in this, with 5 of them, 10 of them, 100 of them, 1,000 of them. Wow. Because I can tell you something for sure. If someone could have reached that 35-year-old nurse before he molested me, damn right I would want a society that was encouraging this. Just something to think about. What do you think? So the reason why I wrote the caption like this is because I am trying to think about this crime and the prevention of it as logically as I possibly can. It's almost like I'm trying to remove the emotion from myself and think about how we can protect children better. So this has to be a conversation. We have to talk about this. And what problem ever got solved without conversation first? I don't think any problem did get solved without us talking and exchanging ideas and debating in a calm as possible way. So this is what I was hoping from this. Now, my thought pattern around this is the more I bring people on to this podcast to talk about offenders, and the more that I look into it, because they are the root of the problem. Okay, the offence is the root of the problem. Because one of the things I am believing in more Let me rephrase that. Something that I believe to be true more so and more so, especially as I speak in schools, is that we can speak in schools and educate children until the cows come home, if you like. We can just do that all day. But there's always going to be some children that slip through the net due to the powerful, sophisticated grooming process and the clever techniques that these people use. There's always going to be children that slip through the net. In fact, I was thinking the other day, let's say I could miraculously speak to every child in the country, and so could other professionals. Let's say we had every child communicated with. What percentage are still going to fall through the cracks? 10%? 20%? And maybe they won't fall for the traditional style grooming, but what happens if they were offered enough? And what I mean by this is something that I've been thinking about recently after I had Richard Pomfret onto my podcast a couple of episodes ago talking about online safety, what kids would do if they were offered a £100 voucher for their online gaming. You know, like, would they send a picture of themselves with no top on? You know, so there's grooming. It's not just like your typical stereotypical grooming. Like, there's grooming from all angles. So even if we manage to get every child spoken to, how many would still fall through the cracks? 10%, 20%, maybe even 30%. Who knows? So it's not the root of the problem, is it? It's not a fail-safe measure, even though it's very, very good. Of course, I do it myself. I speak in schools, and I will continue to do that. And I believe it's a great move. It's a phenomenal achievement from us to get schools to even give us a chance. But it's not the root of the problem, is it? It's not truly prevention. It's it's more so reactive. You know, the child will come to us when something has happened. So we need to start thinking about preventative measures. Now, the problem that we have is the preventative measure is with the offender, is communicating or engaging on some level with the offender. Now, of course, I've done lots of podcasts about reaching offenders before they commit the crime. Now, that's a big conversation in itself. But I think what happened with this title, Should a Therapist Speak to Paedophiles, is as soon as I used the word paedophile, we automatically assumed of a psychopath criminal who had been offending for 10, 20 years. And they are around. And we can continue putting them in prison forever, repeatedly. And every time they come out, they are going to keep offending. Yes, we know that there are characters. There are evil human beings up to no good like that. But we have a scale, don't we? Because we have a scale where offenders have offended once, they've offended 5 times, they've offended 10 times. They've never offended at all, but they feel the temptation to offend. So we've got all of these types of criminals / potential criminals. Okay. Now, there were a lot of comments saying, I know a way to fix this. Let's just kill them all, essentially. Right. Now, that conversation of just throwing, let's just kill them all out there is because we don't give out the death penalty for any crime in this country. So just by saying that is not fixing anything. If you're going to continuously just say, just kill them all and put like the gun emoji in the comment section, please only do that if you're out there campaigning for the death penalty if somebody molests a child. I would actually be very interested in supporting a movement like that. If you rape a child, I believe as a society, maybe we should consider bringing the death penalty back for that. I know that Florida, the state in US, has done that, and I'd be really interested in more information on that. If you know about that, put it in the comments section, please, if you're watching along on YouTube. I know if you're listening along on your podcast app, you can't comment, but yeah, let's try and get discussion going on this. So we don't have the death penalty in this country. Another thing that we cannot do is we cannot lock people up for life. Nobody ever gets life, right? Especially for a first offence. I don't think even if you murder someone or you get done for manslaughter, you even get life. So you're definitely not going to get life for raping, molesting, assaulting sexually a child, especially as this crime is not really considered that seriously in our justice system. So you can't lock them up forever. We're not locking them up forever. So again, if you're just going to keep throwing that in the comment section, please come up with another comment, because unless you're out there campaigning for it, and again, I would be very interested in supporting a campaign like that, because I believe the sentences are embarrassing and pathetic for offenders, sex offenders against children. So we can't lock them up forever. Now, there's another complication about locking paedophiles / offenders up forever, and that is the financial implications of that. It costs an extremely absurd amount of money to keep a prisoner in prison. So to start locking up everybody for life would be way too expensive. Where's that money going to come from? Would you be okay with your taxes being raised to accompany that? If your answer to that is no, then you mustn't say it. Okay, one other thing, and I'll finish on this, because I know I've spoken about this a number of times. Another problem with locking up all sex offenders, no matter what severity of the crime they committed against a child is, there's no room anymore in our prisons here in this country. I heard that the capacity is, and I may not have these numbers correct, okay, so don't shoot me down on this, but I heard that the capacity is 100,000. I heard our prison capacity is 80,000, and we're more or less full already. On the sex offenders register, and I know not all of those will be against children, there's 100,000 people on the sex offenders register. So let's say a third of them are against minors. That's 30,000 approximately. Where are we going to put them all? And to build prisons would take an incredible investment and many years to put that infrastructure together. Again, are you happy for your taxes to be raised for that? If the answer is yes, then cool. Okay, so it's not as simple. What I'm trying to get at is it's not as simple as just saying kill them or lock them up if they touch a child, if they molest a child, if they rape a child. It's a lot more complicated than that. So we live in this land, we live by these rules. Yes, we can campaign to get them changed. I hope to get into campaigning work with the government at some point on this journey with my work, trying to push that and trying to influence that. 100% sure that is something I've got in my vision. But for now, when we don't have all of those things available to us, what we gonna do? What we're gonna do with offenders who serve their prison sentence, their short prison sentence, are released back out into our community. We're just going to shut the light out on them, push them in the corner, and have our fingers crossed that they're never going to offend? Is that going to work? Now, some of them will never offend again because they don't want to go back to prison, but some of them will. Could we have intervened? Okay. Now, you'll see that I'm favouring the word offender here instead of paedophile, because I feel like the word paedophile, as I've already mentioned in my title, just created so much emotion. But I also feel like maybe the word is necessary. Now, just for clarity, I want to just pull up the definition of the official definition of what a paedophile is, because a couple of people were commenting, just discussing that briefly. So give me 1 second and I'm going to search that. Okay, so I've just Googled paedophile definition, and in the description here, the first one that comes up is paedophilia in conventional use, a psychosexual disorder generally affecting adults, characterized by sexual interest in prepubescent children or attempts to engage in sexual acts with prepubescent children. So just to put that out there, a paedophile is somebody with a sexual interest to prepubescent children, and I think that word carries so much energy and it makes us all angry, me included. And I think what happened with this post was, as soon as people saw that title, maybe they didn't even read my caption, or they read my caption already with a frame of mind of pure anger. Because when I mentioned the word therapy, I think we feel like therapy is a helpful service that somebody should deserve. Now, this is a very interesting point, because, of course, when the Instagram post continued to get traction, when I woke up the next morning and there was 120 comments there, I think it's up to 160 comments on Instagram now, I started speaking to everybody that's close to me that have been working with for a long time on this topic, and I spoke to many of them to ask them what they thought about that. And they were actually one very, very interesting woman was very surprised that people were thinking that therapy is a gift. Therapy is some kind of something you access as kind of like, if that's given to you, or you purchase that's like I'm lost for the word that I'm trying to find. I know it's there somewhere. Some people think it's like, it's a privilege, and I'm pretty sure it is a privilege. If you're paying for it, you're privileged to be able to afford therapy. In fact, I'm going to say that's very correct. But, therapy is also offered by the government for certain services, and it's considered a help. It's considered, as I keep saying, a gift. And so we don't want to offer that to a paedophile, somebody that has committed a sexual offence against a child. And again, we don't want to give them that. What do we want? We want them locked up or to never see the light of day again. But again, just to remind you where this conversation is at, we've already explored that can't happen. So we're looking at alternatives here. But the woman that I was speaking to, she's great, right? She just thinks about things in such a unique way. And she was like, I feel like some of the audience are misinterpreting the word therapy, because it's not a gift, it's not a help. It's a professional who's trained in trying to solve a problem. And that is what we're all looking for as a society. We're trying to solve the problem in that person's head so it maximizes the chances that they never offend again, because that's what we're after. That's why and then as soon as I say that, I know some people will be listening or watching this and being like, but you can't solve the thing in their head. They're disgusting. They're monsters. There's no cure. And that's exactly why I started my post with the caption of, before anyone shouts there's no cure, I didn't say anything about a cure, because I am not saying anything about a cure, right? I am not trying to put forward that we can save these people, right? Or there's some way of undoing the sexual gratification that they get from the thoughts of a child, right? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, how the hell are we going to maximize the chances that they never offend again? How are we going to do that, right? Because again, I'm going to say it, they are released from prison at some point. They live in our communities at some point, right? So what are we going to do here? Who's going to do this work, right? And then some people are saying, like, or some of them don't want to change. Yes, some of them don't want to change. And some of them would never engage in a service like this if it was available. Some of them would never entertain the encouragement from society if we were to encourage people to go and seek some form of help, support, whatever word you want to use, to go and sort whatever is out in their head. But like I said in my caption, and this is why I wrote it as carefully as I possibly could, imagine if we were to be successful in this with 5 of them, 10 of them, 100 of them, 1,000 of them. Imagine that. Because please don't think that paedophiles, sex offenders against minors, because when we say paedophiles, remember, we're saying prepubescent children, but we also need to include sex offenders against teenagers too, right? So imagine, please don't think that they're like 1 in 1,000. Okay, there are countless people out there looking at indecent stuff, illegal stuff online, having thoughts about these things, committing the crime. There's lots of people out there. So imagine if we could, even if you just did 5, even if the service was available and you stopped 5 people from offending. Right, now another thing that I want us to just think about, which I think about heavily, is when we get this gun emoji attitude, which I don't think is very productive, by the way, and we get this attitude of this conversation and these thoughts that this conversation we're trying to open here, people getting very angry and attacking others. I saw a couple of comments saying, if you defend paedophiles, you must be one of them. I mean, please, don't write things like that. People who are following my pages will be on there, and they would have probably wanted to express their opinion on this question, and they see somebody write a comment like that. If you're defending paedophiles, it must mean you are one. And it just closes the whole circle. It just closes the whole discussion. When somebody engages in that comment section and they're reading through it, who's going to write a comment, which we're looking for? We're looking for different people's opinions. Who's going to write that when that's the attitude going on? Come on. Again, I'm just going to keep saying the same thing. We're on the same team. We want the same things. Please. I've had that comment towards me a number of times too in this time that I've done this work, and that hurts. Being somebody that's been through this as a child as well, that hurts. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, well, look, if we're going to throw these comments around, are we thinking about paedophiles only being the 60-year-old, 50-year-old man? Because if we're going to start shouting out about like kill them, lock them up forever, what are we going to do with the 19-year-old that's committed a crime against a prepubescent child, right? What are we going to do about the 17-year-old that's committed a crime against a prepubescent child? We're going to lock them up and shoot them? What about the 11-year-old? What about the 13-year-old that's committed a crime against a prepubescent child? What are we going to do with them? And what happens if they were your son? Would you want your 13-year-old son killed because they got taken down rabbit holes for the past year on pornography and started watching things they shouldn't have been and couldn't come forward for help because society is shunning them? Shunning people like that child. They're scared. And then because society are talking about gun emojis and locking them up forever, so that 13-year-old boy who's gone down rabbit holes continues going down rabbit holes and eventually commits the crime. Right. So what are we going to say about this? What happens if it was your husband? What happens if it was your brother? What do you want in those situations? And look, if you are a victim of a sexual crime when you're a minor, like I am not trying to downplay the crime. Okay, I'm not trying to say that the crime is forgivable. I'm not trying to say that we should accept the crime at all. I'm just talking about how we're going to move forward with this. I just want to make that really, really clear. I don't want to upset anyone. I don't want to make anyone angry. I just want to think about this logically, right? Again, I'm not trying to downplay any crime against children, okay? I wish the sentences were at the maximum. I really do, because it would be a good deterrent for people who were tempted to commit a crime like this if it was like minimum 20 years. Do you know what I mean? With a good success rate of prosecution. So we've got to think about a paedophile, a sex offender, in its range. We've talked about it now. You've got the one that just doesn't give a damn and will continue offending. You've got the one that commits a crime for the first time, but also you've got somebody who's tempted to commit the crime and isn't sure what to do about it and feels the pull to commit the crime, right? Yes, you can call them all evil, right? But we're trying to work out the best strategy so that they never offend again or offend in the first place, okay? It's got to be worth a conversation. And then for those that have offended, maybe they've seen prison and they're out, right? Or maybe they haven't seen prison, they've never been caught before. For those that have offended, please remember, we're talking about a range of ages. We're not just talking about that 60-year-old man, that 50-year-old man. We're talking about even older teenagers, men in their 20s, etc. And I use men because it is an overwhelming majority of offenders are men. So I just use that for the purpose of this video. Now, I just wanted to make a video about this because I think it's worth a conversation, and I just wanted to comment about the energy that went on in that comment section. I don't want that to become a common thing. The comment section is a place for us all to exchange ideas and opinions and respect each other. And yes, it can get fiery and angry, but don't fire shots at each other. That's not going to be helpful. And if you can just think about the children looking at us adults, metaphorically, that they're desperate for us to find solutions to these problems. They're desperate for that. And they're relying on us to have adult, mature conversations. They're relying on us to think about this logically and with sense. I'm thinking about trying to find any psychologists, psychiatrists, counsellors that actually do work with sex offenders. A couple of them did put comments in the comment section, because to speak to somebody who's had a long career working with sex offenders is going to be very interesting to see what their findings were, because it may be you're never going to change them, but we better monitor them and we better get them on sex offenders registers. But they may say that they managed to convince some of them to never offend again, and maybe we could get some statistics around that. And that is why I finished the caption because I can tell you something for sure. If someone could have reached that 35-year-old nurse before he molested me, damn right I would want a society that was encouraging this. And what a brave person it would be, what a brave therapist it would be to volunteer themselves to work with somebody who had committed an offence against children. I mean, come on, we've got to shout out these people. Yeah, we've got to shout out the police on the child abuse investigation teams that do this work day in, day out. Imagine watching all those videos imagine watching all those videos of a child being sexually abused to try to prosecute the criminal that you're trying to lock up in prison. And you're meant to clock off at the end of the day and go home and think like nothing's happened. Again, professionals that work in that capacity, prison officers that work with sex offenders, they are all heroes. Okay, they are all heroes, because it's easy for us to be behind our mobile phone or computer screen writing a post. I'm talking about me included. It's easy for me to throw these posts out there and think that I'm doing great work, and I believe that I'm doing great work, but come on, I'm not on the front line. I am not on the front line like these therapists, these counsellors, these psychiatrists, these prison officers, these policemen who work actually with sex offenders and paedophiles. What are we going to do about this situation? These are the big questions if we're serious about protecting children. Now, I'm going to leave it there. I am pretty sure there's going to be so many things as soon as I turn this camera and this microphone off that I'm like, I didn't mention that, and I didn't mention that, and but I don't actually write a prepared list before I record these, and I do that on purpose. And I know that means that I'm going to miss some things that I've been thinking about over the last week since this post went out, but I just want this to be off the top of my head, and I enjoy the challenge of trying to continually throw out the ideas as they come into my mind and try to string them all together in some kind of order that makes sense. So I hope this has got you thinking. I hope that for anyone that felt uncomfortable or attacked in the comments section last week, I'm very sorry. 2 people messaged me saying they've got to unfollow because that was too much for them. I'm very sorry if that made you unsettled. And for the people that I really made angry with this post, I'm also sorry to you too. I can only imagine that going to bed that night after reading that and getting engaged in that comment section and feeling the fire would have been difficult for you too. I didn't mean that for you either. Yeah, for everybody involved in that discussion, I didn't mean for it to unsettle. But just moving forward, there's going to be more posts like this, and we're going to have to just continue exchanging ideas because we are all on the same team. All we want is for this crime to stop happening to so many children. I want to say a big thank you for joining me on this podcast, and I'll see you for another one soon. Thank you. Okay, so I hope I covered that post well enough, giving you my thoughts off the back of the craziness that happened on Instagram last week. I hope that you're okay with how it went, and I hope that we can continue having these conversations. I know they're tough, I know they're uncomfortable, I know they're emotive, but we need to have them because we all are concerned for the safety of children. And here on this podcast, we break the taboos, we break the silence, and we don't tiptoe around the topic. We face it head on because we are strong, and we know that logically we need to start evolving this conversation and our methods and techniques of preventing this crime against children. I hope this podcast was okay for you, and I'll see you again for another one. Thank you.